All right, let's dive into Zechariah chapter 10. This is a really powerful prophecy. It starts with the people in total crisis and ends with this incredible promise of restoration. We're going to see it tackle everything from bad leaders to God's direct intervention. So let's get right into it. So this one line pretty much sums up the core problem of the entire chapter. The people are troubled because there was no shepherd. You can just picture it, right? A flock, totally scattered, vulnerable, just lost. It's a powerful image of a nation in despair, and it's this exact problem that the prophecy is about to address head-on. Okay, so our first section looks at verses 1 and 2, which is all about a call for true rain. And what's happening here is the prophet gives a very direct instruction. Stop looking for help in all the wrong places. It's time to seek blessings from the only source that can actually deliver.
I mean, look at how simple this command is. It's just ask. For people living in a dry, arid land, rain wasn't just rain. It was everything. It was life. It was prosperity. So the prophet's point here is so clear. Real blessings, the kind that actually matter, they don't come from chanting to idols or going through empty rituals. They come from one place, asking God directly.
And then verse 2 really gets to the heart of why they were so troubled. It says they turned to idols that spoke vanity, which basically means emptiness, nothingness. They were looking for comfort from fortune tellers who were just feeding them lies. And that's the result, right? They're left wandering around like a flock with absolutely no one to guide them or keep them safe. All right, moving into our second section, the focus totally shifts. Now we're talking about judgment on false shepherds. So the problem has been laid out, and now God's attention turns to the ones who are actually responsible for this mess. You're going to see his anger flare up, but what's amazing is where it leads, not just to punishment, but to this promise of a radical, total transformation. The language here is wow, it's so direct. God's anger is kindled, it's lit on fire, specifically against the shepherds, the failed leaders. But here's the twist in this verse, and it's a big one. God's response isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration. He's going to take his flock, the house of Judah, and transform them from these scattered, helpless sheep into his very own goodly horse in the battle. What a turnaround. So let's break down what these terms actually mean. When it says shepherds, we're talking about the leaders, both civil and religious. So the kings, the princes, the priests who are pushing all this idolatry. And the goats? Well, that's even more specific. It's referring to the chief ones among them, the really influential leaders who were at the very heart of all the corruption. Now this verse, this is a huge turning point in the whole chapter. After God deals with the false shepherds, he makes this incredible promise that true leadership and real strength are going to come from Judah itself. This is a massive shift, moving away from just judgment and into a messianic promise. And it's all explained through these three really cool symbols. So first up, we have the corner, or what we call the cornerstone. Now, if you know anything about ancient building, the cornerstone was the essential stone. It held the whole building together, made sure everything was stable and lined up right. Prophetically, what this is pointing to is a ruler, a prince, the Messiah, who's going to be the very foundation for his people. Okay, second symbol, the nail. Don't think of a tiny little nail. Think of a big, sturdy peg, the kind you'd use to anchor a tent in a storm or join massive timbers together. It's a symbol of pure security, of steadfastness. It's this brilliant picture of a leader you can absolutely depend on. And it actually echoes another prophecy in Isaiah about a figure who is fastened as a nail in a sure place. So cool. And the third symbol is the battle bow. Now, this isn't just talking about a single weapon. It stands for complete military power. All the men, all the arms, everything you need for a decisive victory. So you put all three of these together, the cornerstone, the nail, the battle bow, and you get a promise of a leader who brings stability, security, and total deliverance. And verse 5 shows us what happens because of this new leadership. The people go through this insane transformation, from vulnerable sheep to mighty warriors. They're described as trampling their enemies, just like God's own warhorse. And the reason for this incredible change? It's spelled out right there for us. Their strength doesn't come from themselves. It comes from one simple fact. The Lord is with them. So now this whole idea of restoration just gets bigger and bigger. In this next section, God makes this amazing, merciful promise. He's not just going to strengthen his people, he's going to actually gather them from all the places they've been scattered. He's going to reunite the entire nation. And the names mentioned here are so important. God says he'll strengthen the house of Judah, that's the southern kingdom, and he'll save the house of Joseph, which represents Ephraim and the northern tribes, the ones that had been scattered and basically lost for centuries. So you see, this isn't some small fix. This is a promise to heal this huge historical wound and bring the whole nation back together. And why? Purely because of God's mercy.
The phrasing here is so unique, isn't it? God says, I will hiss for them. Now, that might sound strange to us, but it's an image a beekeeper would understand. It's the sound you make to call your swarm. It's this powerful, personal, and super effective call that his people are going to hear and respond to. He's calling them home. And the reason he's calling, because he's already redeemed them.
Now, this is interesting. The commentary we're looking at actually connects this ancient prophecy to much more recent history. This timeline here lays out one way of interpreting it. It suggests that major events, starting way back with the Spanish Inquisition in 1492, then moving to changes in Ottoman land laws, and all the way up to the creation of modern Israel, that all of these could be seen as steps in fulfilling this ancient promise of gathering.
So as we get to the final section of the chapter, this whole gathering is described in really epic terms. It actually draws a direct parallel to the biggest, most important act of deliverance in Israel's entire history. You guessed it, the Exodus from Egypt.
And hearing Egypt and Assyria mentioned here is a really big deal. These weren't just random countries on a map. These were Israel's greatest historical enemies, their biggest oppressors. So by promising to bring his people out of these specific places, God is sending a clear signal. This deliverance is going to be so complete that it will overcome the most powerful, most symbolic enemies they've ever known.
And you have to remember, these two powers represented two different kinds of threats. Assyria's pride was all about its brutal military, its cruelty, its arrogance. Egypt's pride, on the other hand, was its worldly power, its culture, and the temptation it always offered as a false place of safety. And the prophecy says God is going to tear down the very pride that made them who they were.
Now, some interpretations take this even further, looking at it allegorically. For instance, they see the line about the drying of the river in the next verse as a reference to the fall of the Turkish Ottoman Empire. And in the same way, Egypt's lost scepter is seen as pointing to the fall of other major powers down the line, like Rome. So it really extends the scope of the prophecy way beyond its original time.
And this brings us to the grand finale of the chapter. It's just magnificent. The key takeaway is that this restoration isn't just a one-and-done event. Nope, it's an ongoing, living reality. God promises he will be their constant source of strength. And because they have that strength, they will walk up and down in his name. Just think about that, living life freely, confidently, and totally secure in who they are because of him. So the chapter ends with this incredible picture of a people completely restored, totally secure, and empowered. And it really leaves us with something to think about, right? What would it look like for us to live with that kind of confidence in God's strength, so much so that we too can walk up and down in his name in our own lives today?